plan. Can you provide any update or timeline as to when New Yorkers can expect cameras throughout the subway system and trains?
Well, there are cameras in place already in many places on the subway system. Same with respect to buses, Metro North and Long Island Railroad. We are engaged in the capital plan and a plan to make cameras universal. And there is a MTA security task force working exactly on that question. The new capital plan will fund cameras throughout the entire system, and that's an important part of the new 2020 to 24 capital plan.
Clayton, you good? Okay. Pat?
Please.
Oh.
Dan?
Pat?
Yeah.
Can you talk about what training MTA transit workers, New York City transit workers get when someone comes up to them to report such an incident? And does this campaign do anything new, whether it's reiterating policy or even updating protocols for them?
The participation, Dan, of the workforces at the subways, buses, Metro North and Long Island Railroad is a pivotal part of this. The unions are supportive of this program. I didn't mention it since the focus today is on hate crimes, but there's been an alarming increase in the attacks on transit workers. Hate crimes and crimes of all type are unacceptable in the subways, buses, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North, and our labor partners are going to be key players in this initiative.
So what do you tell them now then? Well, what do you tell them now then when such an attack or bias incident occurs?
Well, look, transit workers, Dan, are extensively trained in calling either their colleagues or the police and alerting the authorities, the police, in many cases, to the a commission of a crime, whether it's a hate crime. That will continue. And obviously the fact that there's been this alarming increase in the number of attacks on transit workers has heightened sensitivity and action on the part of our union brothers and sisters. Please. Well, the victim in the case that I just mentioned self-reported. I'm not going to comment on the details of the investigation, but the fact that the victim self-reported on a more or less current basis, as I understand it, is quite important. Getting information to the NYPD or the MTA police as soon as possible is critical. David.
Yeah, what do you say to somebody who, ride the train every day? It's routine to see somebody just shouting slurs on your car. Maybe you opt to go to the next train because you think that reporting it is going to be too time-consuming and involve too much energy. What do you say to folks who think that reporting these types of events when they see them is just not worth the extra step or two?
Well, look, they're wrong, right? It's important to cut this behavior off, hate crime type behavior, even if it's just yelling slurs, which itself is offensive and constitutes a hate crime. You don't want that to escalate, and frankly, one of the lessons of the Holocaust is that it is important to take the early signs of hate into account, take them seriously, and that's what we're doing. We're raising consciousness by this. We're giving the public and transit workers the information as to how these hate crimes ought to be reported, and we want to drive the number of hate crime incidents throughout the entire system down. Anybody else? Andrew.
I just wondered if Sarah addressed what she talked about. We talked about as a Jewish woman, this is personal. I just wondered if you could elaborate on that. And the spike in anti-Semitism in transit and across the city with that.
Sure. I think that, especially on this day, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, reminding all of the customers that ride New York City Transit, that saying things lead to saying things leads to more and more progression of issues. So really want to make sure that we raise awareness and do everything we can. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. All right, last question, Dan.
I was open for anyone at the MTA or any people here invited to speak would like to address this. When I looked at the stats, the biggest incidents of hate crimes were anti-Semitic in nature, and also on the types of crimes were aggravated harassment 1, criminal mischief 4. They not only were the two biggest categories, but also saw the biggest increases. Can you just explain what the nature of these incidents are in terms of what the criminal mischief is and what the aggravated harassment is?
Look, Dan, each of those crimes or alleged crimes is different. The facts are different in every case. The reality is that there have been too many. The 42% increase in hate crimes on New York City Transit is unacceptable. And whether the hate crime involves violence, a verbal slur, graffiti, it's unacceptable. And the point of the campaign today is to raise awareness and to drive the number of these incidents down, period, across the MTA system.
Evan, did you want to say something about the anti-Semitic nature of it?
Listen, I think it's the numbers that you're putting out are trends now that we've seen over the last 4.5, 5 years. The amount of anti-Semitic incidents that we're seeing, assaults, the type of assaults, also the amount of anti-Semitic graffiti. And again, I talked about the normalization. When there was anti-Semitic graffiti, 5 years ago, there'd be a press conference over it. Now it maybe goes into our audit and is something that is just on Twitter. The same thing is now starting to happen with assault. So I think what we're seeing now is the idea of a pyramid of hate. And the top of that pyramid is genocide. And being it is the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, there's a baseline of that. And it starts with how people interact with one another. And it starts with how they interact with one another and the kind of language that they use and the behavior that ends up, God forbid, leading to a genocide. And we need as a society to continue what the MTA is doing by trying to prevent that and change civil society that we're seeing now rapidly changing in front of our eyes. And these are the kind of programs that hopefully will do that.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let me just, before we wrap up today, it's important that we also understand, that you all understand that when TJNC New Yorkers, especially black and brown TJNC New Yorkers, are attacked, harassed, the first thing we do is report it to one another, if we do that at all, or we just pay it and keep it moving. Because oftentimes when you are black and brown in New York City, you are already assumed guilty in the perpetrator. And so oftentimes that is one of the main reasons why you don't see an increase in reports of hate crimes towards the TJNC community. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
How many de-escalation advice if we're seeing one of these incidents happening and somebody maybe doesn't move along the police? How can they de-escalate?
Right. Right. So I would first say that if you feel brave enough, just say stop it, quit it, right? Cut that out. I can use some more, not so polite words. But also, we have smartphones today. One of the main reasons why we're able to report and document and people believe us is because we have smartphones and we document through our smartphones. And so you can do the same thing if you don't really want to be involved personally.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you.